You are listening to the Nosy Dragon. I am your dungeon master / innkeeper, Jussun. I am joined by my players / patrons, Ben.
Good evening.
And Josh.
Howdy doo-dah dandy.
Today's session, we're going to be talking all about character creation. Hey guys, before we get into today's episode, I just want to let you know today's episode was made possible in part by Goblin Emporium. More about them later in the episode. Well, guys, character creation.
Yeah,
Character creation.
We all begin somewhere. I wouldn't exist. You wouldn't exist. Who would exist without character creation?
Character was just a twinkle in their player's eye.
That's a different kind of character.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is a big cornerstone, isn't it? And yeah, it's kind of such a broad topic where to start on it. But I think
I know exactly where to start. I mean, we wrote it down.
It's true. So I'll admit that we have some notes.
How dare you?
So starting from an idea is our first topic here, and I honestly feel like this could almost be an entire episode in and of itself.
I actually find this part difficult. I mean, for me, when I'm not at the table and when I'm like on my own, just thinking about D&D as I do, it's like I come up with character ideas, like bouncing one off another, this and that. But when it comes to actually sitting down and making a character, I lose it all. It's just like I run blank. Do you guys experience that at all?
You got to write it in your notes, dude. Because I do that same thing where it's like, I don't know, I'll just come up with a character idea and then I'll be like, is that worth it? I'll just write it down in my notes. I have a note called D&D characters, and it's just like a bunch of different ideas I have. But I guess I'm kind of curious. I want to ask, like, because I know the answer for myself, but like, what's the first thing? Like, what's the catalyst that starts your like creating a character? Like, what's the very first thing?
Campaign that you can play it in. I feel like so many characters that people create are just like created in the void.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah.
They never actually get put into anything. I try not to create. I don't know. I guess because I'm a dungeon master most of the time, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about creating player characters because I'm often creating NPCs. And those guys, I do just sit down and create them, and then I can throw them in whenever they're usable or needed. Right. Or never, which is 50% of the time. But as from character creation, usually it's because there's a campaign on the horizon and I need to create a character for that. But I think most of my ideas for character creation, my sparks, come from media, like some sort of a character and some sort of a thing, maybe a comic book reference or something like that. And I go, man, that'd be fun to play in D&D. And so then I'll start from there. So it's like, how could I play Batman but like at level 1? Yeah. Without obviously without the bravado and stuff. But like, how could I make a good platform for the Batman character as an idea, right?
Yeah, that he could level up into. And I think that's also, this is kind of off topic, but like I think that's an important thing. Like, I feel like oftentimes when people are creating their characters, they forget that most of the time they're starting at level 1. So if you want to be like Sauron, you're like, I want to be this ultimate destroyer of man, but I have 4 HP. Like,
yeah, it's true.
Like a single boar's tusk would destroy you. But anyways,
what do you think, Ben?
Yeah, I want to hear Ben. What's your character? Where do you start from?
So for me, it's kind of a mix in the two. Like, I feel like it can definitely be very advantageous to start creating a character based on what campaign you're going to play, because like what situations are, whether magic's going to be, on our last topic of session 0, all that information's been laid forth and you can put it into your character directly. While if you are, if you have an idea for a character that you want to play that you've made before, it can be a little difficult to try and mold that or change it to fit into a different campaign. So usually when I create a character, it's based on what I think would be like. I have an idea of maybe an emotional context or like some situation that would be like really exciting to explore. Like if I wanted to play a bard, then I would first think like, all right, what story am I trying to tell? What happened? Wow. I start backstory first.
Interesting.
And then I shape the character like, maybe what race would make sense for him.
I've done it like that, like one of two ways, like, where it's super detailed character motivation stuff way before I've rolled stats, way before I even know what class he's going to be, way before I even know what race.
Yeah.
I know the pillars of their personality. I know their drive, their motivation, their trauma, and vice versa. I've done the complete opposite, where it's like, I saw a meme of, a skeleton in a regular group, and there's some joke about like, does that hurt you? And he's like, I have no pain receptors. And then he like says, someone in the group party says something hurtful, like a joke that hurts his feelings, and he's like, I felt that. And I thought that was so funny, and I was like, man, I want to play a skeleton now. And then I like worked really hard to try to create something around this skeleton character. Where, I've done the opposite, where I started with, this kid was alone as a child. He found a fairy, and he was trying to take care of this fairy, but because the fairy's injured, but then he couldn't speak the fairy's language, and the fairy died in his care. And at that point on, he was like, I'm never gonna make that mistake again. I'm gonna know everything about magical creatures. And so then that character set out to create the monster manual. And so he's constantly like researching all of the world and the creatures around him. So what race is he? Doesn't matter. What class is he? Doesn't matter. Like, I don't care what his stats are. I'm just put the highest thing roughly in intelligence, and that's about it. Like, I don't care what everything else is.
I can imagine that those characters are really fun to play, but a little bit frustrating for other characters in your party who are like trying to drag you away from the Medusa who's turning everyone into stone, and you're busy like, I gotta take notes.
Wait, I need a sample of its feces. I'll never know what it is.
I think it can be really exciting and interesting if you're like in a role play focused group. But sometimes it's like if you're just like you're trying to take the time to like do your character thing, and everyone's like, hey, I want to tell the DM which traps I'm looking for.
I think the dangerous part of those characters that who they are before you've ever thought of any statistical thing about the character, like what would go on a character sheet, is often when those characters die, your heart breaks.
If you create like a character that you put that's almost with anything, but like when you put so much time into your character and so much focus, and you kind of build this like this person, then when they die, you experience a real sense of loss,
Sounds like you have a story, Ben.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah. Do you? You have a good one?
I do. It was, I was playing a copper dragonborn bard named Neldrash, who used to be a pirate. And he used to sing like stories of his crew until they came across this enormous sunken treasure, and in order to take one more share of gold, they kicked him off the boat, because you don't need a bard to handle the rigging or like keep the boat afloat. The first one to go. I love that character.
What a shit group of players, man.
No, it was no. That was
wait.
Was
that the players, or that was? That's just your backstory. What happened to the character?
Backstories. So I was like, So I formed a new crew.
I was like, Jesus
the
Christ.
party.
Wow, Ben, you're playing with some real douchebags.
That
Hey,
is,
Ben, you know
can
that
you imagine?
cherished, beloved character of yours? Yeah, you can just tear up that character sheet because we want to take more gold with us.
Oh my God, could
I
you
don't
even imagine?
I don't think I've met any players in my life who would be that big of dicks.
That's Hitler zone right
yeah,
there. That's
exactly.
like major Mondo evil. But yeah, what
Major
happened to
Mondo
what
evil.
happened to your character?
So the whole thing was they were very like eager to kind of prove themselves and to like show that they had value, because in that moment it was like the ultimate like, you are not worth this. And so his entire like idea was to make a name for himself, and he was very mistrusting because his crew completely abandoned him. And so very, very slowly he built this relationship with the party, kind of like them understanding him, very slowly opening up, and it was really kind of a strong like emotional context. And then in one dungeon where there was once again a situation of like an extreme amount of wealth being guarded by these monsters, Neldrash decided to use his magical abilities to lure them away. And he had planned to escape, but by the time that he had it was like this horde of giant spiders. By the time that he had like got them away far enough for the party to get what they needed, the spell ended, and they all killed him.
Oh God, dude.
And he was alone, just like he was left alone at the beginning of his party. But this time, it was his choice.
I mean, that's got to be kind of satisfying, though. Like
It sounds
that's
like
a very
character arc.
a very epic conclusion to this character.
It was, but it was tragic too. I was like,
Yeah, it's hard to say goodbye.
My monster manual guy died because the campaign fell apart because of an argument.
oh no,
God.
that's so
Now
much
that is
worse.
tragic. That feels terrible. 'Cause
That's
it's
how
like-
most of my characters die, actually.
Oh.
The campaign just
fizzles out. Yeah, which is such a sad, unsatisfying conclusion. Oh gosh. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, starting from an idea, I feel like starting with like a psychological, emotional, in-depth perspective of who this character is definitely a way. But you can also do it just as simply as like, how would I play, the Joker as a character, or how would I play, John Wick, but
Yeah.
from level 1,
Yeah,
I feel like a big
exactly.
mistake is people like, oh, I want to play John Wick, and then they set up to play John Wick, but they don't realize they're starting at level 1, where John Wick is like easily like level 17 or something. So it's just like,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
probably should aim a little lower than John Wick at, grow into John Wick should be your goal. How can I start a character that grows into John Wick?
Yeah,
you know?
it's like, I don't
It's
care
true,
how high you're rolling for your stats, you are not
Yeah.
getting a fucking
Even if you
22
rolled
in
all
dexterity.
18s, it's just it's not happening. Like you're
Yeah.
just gonna you're gonna have just one hit die at level 1, no matter what. So you're just gonna die
Yeah.
to everything.
Yeah.
Which is appropriate.
That's how it
Then
should be.
so like what I did is like, for example, for a character idea that just quickly like, oh, I have an idea for your character. How can I make that possible? Roadhog from Overwatch. I'm a one-man apocalypse. Anyway,
Really good Roadhog laugh, actually.
so I was like, okay, what are his fundamentals? He doesn't wear armor. He can take a lot of damage. He can take a lot of punishment. And he does that hook where he pulls people closer, and
Yeah.
he can regenerate health with, by drinking the gasoline. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm starting at level 1, so I'm not going to be able to do everything, but I can do like one level in Barbarian, and then pick a human, just a really fat, tall human. And then I can get the feat, Magic Initiate, and then grab the cantrip Thorn Whip. right? So now I can whip people closer to me at level 1. Bada bing, bada boom. I'm a barbarian, so I have that, damage resistance and a D12 to hit die, right?
Yeah.
Starting off hit die, so that's a nice amount of hit points, and resistance to all damage types with the totem bear, barbarian thing. However, I can't use Thorn Whip and be raging, so it's not something I'll be able to use all the time.
Yeah.
Of course, if you just ask your DM, like, hey, man. So
the
the other ways I would reskin it is be like, the Thorn Whip would look like, a chain when he does it.
Yeah.
Because why not?
Exactly.
And then, you use
a
meat hook as your main weapon, and it's just a great axe.
It's just a sickle or something
to look like a big meat hook. Because why not? And then, I don't know, shotgun, like a heavy crossbow that you just shoot sometimes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like, it's not perfect, but it's more than enough to get a point in the cross. You just wear an apron, it's like super easy. Other way, you could play a monk, and that way you can always do the thing, but you just don't get the hit points.
Yeah.
But that was another way you could always use a Thorn Whip.
I like the idea of Roadhog as a character too, because he's not immortal. I think a lot of media protagonists.
Yeah, I guess if you want to be like, I want to play
characters,
Superman, like, not really gonna happen.
Exactly.
He dies in the game many times.
Yeah, constantly. Yeah. Healing potions is the last thing I forgot. Healing potions.
Oh,
then
right.
You're done.
Well, I mean,
Then you're done.
You created Roadhog. Just be a weird sociopath too.
Now that's the easy
chaotic
part.
evil.
Yeah, easily.
Chaotic evil or neutral evil, one of the two. Then you're done. You've presto. So but I think it's dangerous just to think, it's gonna be just as badass though as Roadhog, and I'll have so much HP and I'll be the tank of the party and stuff. It's like you got to grow into these things. You got to fill these shoes. It's different if you're starting level 5 or 10 or something.
Yeah, and I think too, like, this is definitely a mistake that I've made a lot, and I think a lot of players make this, especially like when they're starting out. But like I think the idea of like, I'm gonna play a badass is kind of like, I think that's a dangerous place to start.
Yeah.
If you like, I think like even just being like, my character thinks of himself as a badass is a way better like thing to build your personality on. Because if you're like, I'm a badass, as soon as you roll your nat 1 on intimidating this guard, then you're like, I suck. My, like this is so lame. Like this game is stupid. And I've seen that happen to a lot of players who start
I want
out.
to play the Terminator, so I'm going to play a Warforged that has human skin, and he is, I am the Terminator, and then you get terminated by a kobold.
Yeah. And I think it's just like,
no.
D&D is not like, it's not video games, and it's not like movies, it's not books, like it's very much its own thing because there's such a random element. So I think like knowing the game is also important. I guess this is like more advice for like people who are just starting out,
I've seen, I feel like I've seen air quotes here, seasoned veterans make the I'm a badass character mistake.
Yeah.
They want to be really cool, and they want to like, I'm Mr. Never Fail. And then when they fail, it really messes up their role play for them. And it's like, this isn't fun.
Yeah. And they get like mad and frustrated because the character's not living up to what you want. And I think like, I don't know. That's like, this is kind of as a role player, but I think knowing how to make your failures as exciting or as fun or as funny as your successes, that's like, I think the cornerstone of like a good D&D player.
Exactly.
Really summed it up. Very clean.
But I guess on I want like sort of how I guess make characters, or I don't know, I think I'm really like random about it. I think it can be like, it can be something as like, I'll just like have an accent I'm doing, and I'm like, okay, who talks like this? Who sounds like that? And I think
absolutely.
I think
I've done the start from the voice one so many times. Like I have a funny voice in my head, and I'm like, I want to play this. This would be fun. I'm totally like, it's on. That was I played an Irish an Irish genasi named Broomstick. No, Scottish. And my whole
Scottish
character
Broomstick.
was I'm Scottish, and it was the best.
Yeah, just the funny. Yeah, and I think it's like
a well fleshed out character.
his personality was very well defined. We'll say it that way.
Oh yeah.
But I think it's like, I don't know. I think it's good what Justin said, like, because I think almost like when you make these characters in your head, it's a fun exercise and it's a fun way to like work on your role play and work on fleshing out or building a character entirely in your head, you know? But I think when it comes down to it, it's like you come up with a really cool idea for a character. And then the campaign you're like, oh, okay, we're going to start a new campaign, you know, when that happens. And then it's like, okay, these are the things that don't work with my character that I wanted to play in this campaign. And it's like, I know for me, I'm like, well, I'm not going to make those concessions because I'm not going to play like a watered down, like crappy version of this character I had this idea for, you know? So I think it's like, I think it is important it's really important to know the setting and as well as the group.
Yeah.
And I think, and I think like stats, when you roll, when you have your stats, it can also be, one character that I had, I know that's how I did it.
Absolutely direct what you
absolutely, because I didn't have a super clear idea of who I wanted to play, and I was like, okay, let me just roll my stats, and they were so incredibly horrible that we didn't realize this at the time, but they were so bad that in the player's handbook, it was not a legal character to play because the points were, the point total was so low. But then I was like, okay, I have who would be so like incredibly bad at everything, who would have this little health, who would have this little everything. And I was like, okay, either like an infant or an incredibly elderly person. And then I played like, it was like a 480-year-old gnome. And it was really fun.
Was
break of their lifespan.
Yeah, at the very end of his, like, as a very old gnome. And it was just fun because like when that character, because of that thing that was sort of like crappy or like I think you wouldn't be excited about, but because I kind of ran with it, became very fun because then the party was like always trying to protect this tiny, incredibly elderly gnome who is like in combat on a big mule, and everyone would be like, stand back, no, get out of there. But I think like, yeah, I think there's so many ways that you could start your character. But I think it is important to like have, if you're building like a real character that you really want like to play, I think it's important to start from a campaign. But the last thing I'll say, I think, is like none of my characters, I think I'll come up with a little idea, like a little catalyst, and I'll have like a little idea of a character. But I am such a lore guy. I'm so focused on backstory that I don't think my characters start like for me, like to have a real character and also it's such a big part of like building their personality.
I have a question.
Later, but yes.
So when you're working with backstory, right? Do you start with like kind of like a lot of the times when I create a backstory, it's around a certain relationship. You know, I know my fellow players first, and then kind of how I want to relate to them. Or do you start with like an individual character, like this is what happened in their life, and then they're meeting the party like for the first time, and why they would do that? Like, which do you find yourself doing more?
Like creating a backstory around the party, or creating a backstory like more centered on my character. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, more centered around the party or more centered around like your character itself.
I think I go back and forth, and I think as I've played more, I've realized like how helpful it is for gameplay if you incorporate another player into your backstory, you know? But I don't know. I think for me, I do like, because I do a lot of it like, I'm just like doing something else and I'm like kind of creating this lore, this backstory. Like I have an example, a character that I kind of created and I was like sort of interested in was, so it was druid. It was a wild shaped druid, a circle of the moon druid. But I was like, okay, like I kind of I wanted it to be like there was like the druid, there was like this character, and then there was this like monster that was like inside of the character that came out. You know that so then there was like two separate personalities. So
Like
that one of the characters
lycanthropy, sort of.
almost like lycanthropy, but more like there's this like lawful good or like chaotic good character, and then like a chaotic evil character. So you get to play like both sides of it. But then I was like, okay, like where does that come from? And I kind of had the idea of like, do you know like there's like a legend, I think it's called like the Black Dog of Berkshire or like something. It's like an
I've
English
never heard
legend,
of
but
that.
there's like this giant black dog that like roams the streets of this like Scottish town. And I was like, okay,
Oh,
maybe
that
it's
sounds
like this
scary.
noble family that has this like curse that's been passed down for generations. And then this character now has this curse, and because of that, they like run, they leave their family because they're like so when they're like on their 18th birthday or something, they find out. And I think that's also like
It sounds
I always
very
try to
dark
find
academia.
very dark academia, but I always try to find like why is this person going on adventures? Like why are they adventuring? Why aren't they like living at home or like doing what
Hmm.
everybody else in the world does, like get a job? Because I think that's always the one thing I always think about. Like, because adventuring, like,
It's
yeah, like if you're,
crazy and
it's
weird.
crazy. It's weird. It's crazy. It's like incredibly dangerous. It's like you have like no home, no roots, and you're like running around. And I think that's why so many people go for the tragic backstory. Because
Yeah.
then it's like, oh, I'm just off on
Also
my
the
own.
Disney classic, you know, it's like what Disney character has not had one or both of its parents
Exactly.
killed?
The
Murdered?
dead parents are like a guaranteed. So I think
It,
it's
it
also
also
like,
it also generates sympathy for the character.
yeah, sympathy. And then like you can kind of give them an edge or like a bit of a, yeah.
Me
Yeah.
never. I love having parents so that my DM can kill them because then that all that juice happens in the
It's an
session.
evil DM. That is an evil DM that kills your parent.
I had a character that I created that was different than the way I normally would go about creating a character. I don't know. I had this idea. Randomly, I asked, "Oh, do you want to play a game?" And I had this idea. I was like, "Oh yeah, I guess I could. I guess I could make a character." And I started thinking. I had this idea of like, "Ooh, I want to play a character who's like can see ghosts."
Hmm.
Mm.
And I was like, well, ghosts are like something everyone can see sometimes in D&D. And I was like, I don't know.
Right.
I was like, okay, maybe there's a particular ghost that he sees. And then
Mm.
I came up with this really, again, very tragic backstory, but also left in plot hooks because I thought like, oh, this would be great. So like the character as a young child, his father came home wounded and wasn't feeling himself, and his mom tried to make him feel better. And then when the night comes, he turns into a beast, quote unquote,
Right.
werewolf, attacks
Yeah.
his mother and almost kills him, and then leaves. And so his mother is severely wounded, and he's like, tries to find help for her as a kid, and he finds this random guy, and this guy's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I'll help your mom." And then he comes in and drinks her blood because he's a vampire.
Oh
Oh
my
my God.
god.
Whoa.
And then he's like, "Oh, she'll be fine. She'll be back on her feet in no time." And he leaves, and he's like a kid, so he's like, "Well, that was weird, but okay." And then the mom's body gets up as a vampire and is like, "All right, I'm gonna I'm gonna eat you now."
Oh,
And then
no.
his mother's soul shows up to fight off the vampire, and becomes
Oh my gosh.
a specter or whatever the different ghosts are, and she fights off the vampire, and then the little boy runs away from now his ghost mom, which is scary to him, and now he doesn't have a dad, and he's just like, oh my gosh. He runs into the forest, and his mom is like haunting him now, and
Mm.
it's like she's kind of helping but also kind of not.
Yeah.
um, so he becomes a druid living amongst in the forest, and it's mostly because he was like trying to get high all the time to like avoid seeing his mom.
Yeah.
And so yeah, as an adult, he's like this really weird, quiet druid guy who's like super emo, who wears like all black, but he's a druid, which I just
Yeah.
think is super weird. He has this scar on his face that doesn't heal from his father, who cuts his face, and like I just love this thing of him being like super like what, and his name is Robert Kuntz, and I wrote this little script of like his kind of personality type, like what he says to everyone, and
Yeah.
it is like, yes, my name is Robert J. Kuntz. Yes, I'm aware that my last name sounds like Kuntz. No, it's this wound on my face never heals. It's a curse. Yes, it hurts constantly. Yes, I've tried to have it cured or removed. Yes, I know I look skinny and pale. This has been a terrible conversation. Let's never speak again. And it's like, it's just what he says to everyone immediately. Like any new strangers, he's just like, I know where this conversation's going.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like he's like always murmuring under his breath, talking to his mom, who's kind of, always making things worse, like trying to be helpful but not helpful at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's a human, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna give him, magic initiate, and we're gonna grab mage hand because druids can't get mage hand, and then that way, when his mom interacts with the environment, I have a thing on my character sheet that's not unfair, right?
Right.
Oh, like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
have a ghost with me. I just get two characters. It's like, no. The mom can't do anything other than manipulate 5 pounds within his sight. So she can't like go into another room and tell him what's on the other side of the door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And potentially, maybe he's just insane and his mom doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It is interesting. That is a
He's
fun,
already
like,
passed on.
but that's sort of a fun, I think it's a good, like, I don't know, like, how do you create the personality of a character? Because I think, like, backstory and, like, everything is sort of like, I don't know, there's so much that goes, like, oh, I'm creating a character. But then, like, when you sit down to play, this character has to have a personality. They have to have, like, their choices need to be motivated by something. And I think, like, that's the other huge paradigm of creating a character is, like,
I mean,
is
to
like
be honest,
your
a
idea,
lot
your
of that,
backstory, your stats, and then your personality. Yeah,
I
you
feel
go
like
ahead.
I feel like a lot of that comes from playing. Like I think
Yeah.
we often
Yeah.
have starting points, like using your backstory as a sort of general basis as to who this person has been up to this point. And like honestly, what voice you're using for them. Like having that kind of be
Voice tells a lot.
It does. Yeah.
it really does.
Like making an entire character just based off the Scottish accent.
Gee, I can't imagine who could have possibly done that.
Yeah.
It's true, but then the more that you play them, the more that you interact with your fellow players and the NPCs
Yeah.
that the
Yeah.
DM puts into the world, the more that character fleshes out and it becomes solid and concrete.
Well, I mean, since I'm so good at character creation, I have those things in mind, right? Like character growth, right? I want to know
Yeah.
where my character is going. What are my goals as a player, and what do I want to see happen in the future, right? So, like my goals for Robert J. Kuntz is for him to stop being like monotone, depressed guy all the time. And his thing is, he's like, I want to be alone. I just want to be alone, right? But the truth is, he is desperate for connection and authentic love. And so it's like he says he wants to be alone, yet he's hanging out with a group of adventurers that he can totally leave at any moment.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, just leave me alone, but also don't abandon me because,
I don't want to be alone.
right. So my goals are is like I want him to I want to see his parents reunited in some way. So he finds his werewolf dad somehow, or he fights his vampire mom, right? And I was thinking like best case scenario, there's some weird like three parents situation where his ghost mom, his vampire mom, and his werewolf dad reunite and make this weird, unhealthy family. And that's how his character retires. Or he like with his vampire dad track down and kill his ghost with his werewolf dad track down his vampire mom. They kill her, and then her ghost moves on as she now knows that he's gonna be safe.
Yeah.
And then he's like stops being weird and emo and disconnected. because partially the reason why he's hard to connect with what's going on is because his mom is always pestering him, and it's hard for him to like be present and to not look weird and constantly talking to nobody.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so that was kind of my goal. Like, okay, well, how can I get his mom to move on? Maybe it's the vampire thing, but I'm totally open to something else. And I would like workshop that with my GM. Like, how can he like grow beyond this point? Because I think to make a character and try to keep it precisely the same from beginning to end, that's creating a boring character.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
That's no fun
exactly,
to play.
yeah.
And that's often characters like that don't last long. Like
They get boring too.
Yeah.
They get boring so quick. Yeah. I've
They get
definitely-
boring
you
to the
mean
person
myself.
playing them and to the people around you.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's so true. Yeah, and I think that's what makes characters interesting is when they're dynamic, when they grow, when they're like when they yeah, I think I had one character that I really liked who was a half dragon sorcerer. And when I set out to play this character, my big goal for him was like kind of like grew up in this like fascist sort of like dragon cult where like everyone was like super evil. And like my goal was like he's going to reform himself and he's going to like spend his time to learn how to like be caring and considerate towards other people because he was like half red dragon. So like, but what ended up happening with his character was like he became incredibly evil. But I think it was interesting that like the way that he like grew from like all these situations that happened, you know? And I think kind of on that same topic, like your character's personality grows so much each time you play them and each time they like interact with the world and like they have to make a choice in a situation and that choice is motivated by their past, but also like that choice, whatever it is, motivates who they're like becoming. So
Completely changed.
I think it is so interesting to like have those goals and like to create a character that is in like a dynamic state of growth where it's like they're starting somewhere and this is where I want them to end. And I think starting like when you're building your character, having those ideas is good, not only mechanically, because you start at low level, you get to high level, but also for that character's personality, for their.
It's interesting that you say like
Yeah.
you had the goal for him to like grow, mature, and become like a better person, but he became worse. Because I had something similar where like I had a character that I was lawful good, and I planned on him growing to become kind of jaded or evil, like realizing like, oh, the world is not as good as it used to be, right? Because he was from a really long time ago.
Yeah.
And he was like, fish out of water in so many ways. And so I was like, okay, either he's going to go from lawful good to lawful evil, right? Still embracing the law, but like becoming, the opposite of what he used to represent. Or he's going to become like neutral good. But I thought the neutral good was kind of like still a journey towards then true neutral and then like neutral evil.
Yeah.
Like I didn't really think he would stay neutral good. But over the development of the character, after like 4 or 5 sessions, he was already being pushed by his new environment to kind of lean into this kind of more, kind of chaotic good. And
Yeah.
it became really hard for him to stick to the lawful ways of things because, well, he didn't have the world that he used to have, for one. And like,
Yeah.
he couldn't make things work the way they used to. And so he had to adapt. And in that adaptation, he also kind of adapted away from his lawful behavior. And by the end, the campaign didn't really end, but by the time we stopped playing, he had changed so much. He changed from this like rigidly strict, anal as they come, lawful, good, ultimate lawful person to the max. Literally, I will follow the law even when it causes misery, kind of to the point of literally saying that in game.
Yeah.
To going to this kind of like guy who cracks dad jokes and is just like, a good influence on the group, but kind of down for anything.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so like, and those are such satisfying moments when your character like kind of reaches a satisfying like where they're like, this is a different character than the one I started playing. And I'm sort of like the character that I'm playing in this current campaign is also like, because when I started the character, I had kind of an idea. Like I was like, I want to kind of play like The Witcher, because the world that we originally started was like kind of infested with these monsters. So I was like, I want to play Monster Hunter. Witcher is a good idea. So he was sort of like really tough and stern, and like, you know, like he spent his life being seen as a monster, hunting monsters. But as he's sort of like grew and developed, he went from like this jaded character, and because of the influence of the party, he became like, and also the like influence of this like new deity that he found, and sort of like wanted to bring back the like the former glory and the former like goodness of his like order back. He became this like more like peaceful and centered and calm, like kind of wizened figure. You know, he started as like sort of like kind of like rash and arrogant and angry, and then he became like calm and more like methodical
which is crazy because like the
wise.
things that happened could have equally gone the opposite direction.
Exactly,
Right?
exactly.
Like your brother was killed, which was
Brother
one
was
of the
killed.
other players, and you lost your arm
I lost my
by
arm.
the guy who killed your parents and your brother. And,
Yeah.
right. And it's like, nah, I'm gonna become a better person.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
it's such an awesome turn.
It is.
Yeah,
It's so
it's
cool.
very satisfying that, and now he's like, and now there's this younger figure in the party, and a lot of what he does is like trying to like impart his wisdom to this like to the younger party, and to like I don't know, to like steer. I think it's just it's interesting, and it's so exciting when you see your character reach like a very satisfying point in their story. And it's like I think that's like one of the big things D&D is about, is like is your characters, you know, and when you see them grow and develop, that's so exciting, that's so awesome. Yeah.
It really, really is. It really is.
And that's sort
special.
of yeah, and I think it's so exciting too, because like that growth is so dynamic, and like
Speaking of growth, right?
yeah.
This made me think of something. You know, if you want to grow, one of the great ways that you can do that is with today's sponsor.
Yes.
Today's episode was made possible in part by Goblin Emporium. At Goblin Emporium, they put warlords and lair owners first by supplying goblins of only the highest quality. All of Goblin Emporium's goblins are sustainably grown and locally sourced, so that you can rest easy knowing that the only thing that you are harming are the adventurers raiding you. From the smallest noblin to the largest bugbear, they've got you covered. And now is the best time to try outfitting your secret place of operations with Goblin Emporium's goblins, because for a limited time they're offering a gold-back satisfaction guarantee. And if you tell them that we've sent you, they'll give you a 20% off your first batch of 100 goblins or more. Goblin Emporium. Goblins you can trust at a price you'll love.
Man.
Yeah, and a lot of products, you know, a lot of times you get sponsored by someone you support it, but this is a product I've used. It's one I really support.
Yeah.
I think their message of sustainability and their prices are real. So
yeah, I mean, they don't use any of those kind of weird curses to bring about goblins, or like changing, you know, babies into goblins. None of that kind of stuff. And you know, like those curses, they're cheap, they're easy, but they damage the weave, and ultimately, if the weave is destroyed, then all of us lose our magic, and nobody wants that.
And no more goblins in the first place. So you're just, you know.
Exactly.
Is it goblin season? I honestly don't know.
Yeah, I actually heard a very interesting.
At Goblin Emporium, it's always goblin season.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Well, I wanted to so we talked about stats, we talked about race, we talked about class. Now we haven't talked. We've all of this has been role play focused, right?
It's so true.
Like,
it's
stats informing role play. Like, oh, how can I? But when is it when you make a character just because you have a really amazing character idea build that has nothing to do with roleplay and is purely min-max?
Yeah.
And what does that look like? Because I have done that where I was like, how could I make a grappling machine? Like a machine that is just the tank of tanks and can grapple anything. And I sat down and I created a character. It was a high level character, definitely not a level 1.
No.
Like it was like level 10, I think. And I kind of, at first I built it to see like how could I do it without like without any magic items and stuff. And then I was like, okay, but like if I had access to everything I wanted.
Yeah.
And I made this absolute ridiculous thing that's such a ridiculous character that it feels like, oh, this has to be an NPC monster. Like this couldn't be a character like this.
Right.
Yeah.
This is a stat block that you use for some sort of, boss encounter.
Yeah.
Oh man. But like, could you just grapple just about anything and hold it there for an indefinite amount of time, or is it just?
It was all about like hand-to-hand combat. So it was like a weird mix of like monk and barbarian and fighter for all these different things, and then a ton of different feats like tavern brawler and other things, combined with a few magic items that increased, unarmed punches and things like that. So they were doing like 13 damage minimum with an unarmed strike.
Yeah.
And had like advantage on grapple checks, and could use like a special maneuver to pin you, which is anyway. It was pretty absurd.
Yeah.
And then of course I was like, okay, well this character, as I'm a dungeon master, I was like, I'll never get a chance to play this thing, so I went full NPC creating mode, and I turned it into an NPC. By also going a little crazy and adding way too many feats.
Yeah.
I added any feat that had grapple or unarmed strike in it. I was like, you're mine.
Yeah.
You can cheat a little bit when you're DMing. It's fun.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, like, because it's so rewarding and satisfying to build like this character story and personality, but it can on the other side be incredibly fun to just build a really overpowered and ridiculous character. What, like, I think too that I've been like toying around with a little bit is like the first one is like, I think this is a really popular like multi-class, kind of a really popular way to make a broken character, but I sort of stumbled upon it while I was like working on that druid character, and I was like, oh, like this would be and then I was also like a druid, I think it's called like barbarian or something is the multi-class where you do well, so what you do is you do a circle of the moon druid, and you then you multi-class into barbarian enough to get the totem of the bear feature. And the way that wild shape works is that you retain all of your class and racial features when you are in your beast. So you go into a rage, you wild shape into a bear, and then unless you're taking psychic damage, you have a resistance to any other all types of damage. So then like, and you can wild shape twice at level 2 as a druid. So by like level 4,
wild shape isn't a spell, right?
It's not a spell, no, it's a class feature. Yeah, so it's an innate ability that you can do twice per day. So then basically you get, I think it's like by level like 4 or something, you get like 38 extra hit points per bear. So you have like 60 hit points on, and then all of that is just like as your bear, and you're doing really good damage as that too. For like
that's
the early
76
level.
hit points with resistance to almost
Well, no, the 76 is, I think I'm including the resistance. Well, actually, I don't know the exact digits, but it's like that way your character just doesn't die. They don't go down. And I think I was also, because I was thinking about it, because we had a bad encounter where like my guy was almost killed, and I was like, this is stupid. I'm never going down ever again. But then also another character I've been playing around with. You have to
also make it a half orc, because half orcs get that,
second
resilience
wind
thing.
Yeah. Or a variant human to get the tough. So that if the bears somehow go, if you want to max out your HP so needlessly.
Well, since you need to be level 3 at least level 4, right? Because you have to go into 2 different classes.
2 different classes, 2 levels and 2 levels.
What? Yeah, I think you need to be level 3 to get the bear totem thing. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I think it's level 5 or something.
Yeah,
but
level
like by
5.
then. So it
So you'd be able to grab a feat anyway. So it'd be better to go orc.
would be better to go orc. Yeah. Yeah.
See, now
Unless
we
you
one thing.
the min-max dot, you know.
but also but I think it's actually better to do the level up. This is personal opinion because you want to put everything into dex and constitution because you carry your unarmored defense as the barbarian into your wild shape. So you can be
No,
a bear that
that's
has
not-
resistance to every type of damage besides psychic that has like 20 AC or something.
That's busted.
So it is insane, and I do intend to play this next campaign.
I'll say one thing. If you are a DM out there, you want to watch out for your min-maxing characters. You want to build campaigns around them. You know,
Yeah.
if they're going to make it, they're going to make it.
Really hard to
If it's
do.
if it's going to be
It's hard to do because it's like,
Ugh.
yeah.
If it's going to be too
People
much
If you only
of
have
a
one
problem,
min-maxing player, then it becomes really hard because it's like, well, if I throw really hard encounters at them for the min-maxer, and then
Yeah.
you know that Jussun playing Robert Kuntz, who doesn't have anything above a +3.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've also had to play that. One person who is like a D&D veteran who did the wild shape thing, and 2 players who had never done it before and were trying it out for the first time. Having them in the same encounters was almost comical because
Yeah.
I would end
Yeah.
up trying, like, the enemy would end up just trying to throw anything and everything at this, like, completely, like, structured character, while the other 2 are you know, throwing sucker punches and just having them crumble.
Yeah. And it's true. Like, it also can be very rough, people in combat, the other people, because I think I've built kind of, I've been a little min-maxy with my character that I'm currently playing, but I think I was like, each turn I was doing an average of like 40 to 60 damage. And there was another player in the group who was doing like 1d8 per turn. So it was like, I would do like,
Yeah,
okay,
another
so I get
player. We don't have to.
68 damage,
We don't have
I
to
get
throw any
68
veils. I
damage.
know it was me.
Yeah. So like, okay, I get 68 damage on this guy, and then the next turn it would be like, okay, I hit him with my staff, and that is a 1d8. So that's 4 damage. But it was just like, so it can be like, I don't know.
It was bad.
I don't know
rolls. It
what
was
you
bad
do
rolls.
about it, but it's sort
Yeah.
of like, I think
You give magic
min-maxing.
items to the people who are not min-maxing.
It
That's what I
almost
did.
min-maxing, it falls on the responsibility of the player to be like, is what I'm doing gonna be fun for everybody? You know, because
It's kind
We
of
have a
like the
character-
warlock thing. So like
Yeah.
sometimes people make this warlock build. They get Devil's Sight and they get this thing that allows them to cast darkness. And they cast darkness on a thing, and then they can see through the magical darkness. And then it's like, oh great, I have advantage, and they have disadvantage. So I have
Yeah.
advantage of hitting them, and then I'm basically invisible to them. And it's like, great, perfect. But you're not playing in it by yourself. You're playing with a
Yeah.
full party of other people who cannot see in your magical darkness.
yeah,
And it's just like, it seems like such a great plan until it's time to execute it. And you realize that you will make everyone in the group blind.
just screw over every. Yeah, yeah. That's kind of the rogue conundrum. I feel like oftentimes rogues just sort of like they play at everyone else's behest.
Yeah.
Or that's not always true. I think that's rough to say, but I have known some rogues that like they'll just do something to screw everybody over, and then it's just like because they get their sneak attack. But
Anything for that.
So it's not, so I feel like, so with the min-maxing thing, for me as a GM, I am totally fine with min-maxing in responsible players' hands.
Yeah.
When
Yes.
a player who I know cannot hold back wants to bring some min-max monstrosity, I kind of shut it down because I know that they're just going to ruin it for everyone. They're just going to,
yeah,
you know, I attack at all times, every time. It just, because it's like their characters are just unstoppable.
yeah.
And
And
I
I
have
think
players that I know I can trust them with the most broken, overpowered stuff, because for them, they enjoy creating a functioning good character, but they're also good role players and good at separating player knowledge from character knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's like, I think that's what it comes down to. Like, you can absolutely min max, but you have to do it responsibly, you know? And you have to do it,
guys.
you have to do it with your DM supervision. So that's the disclaimer. Min maxing, I think, because I do it a lot.
Your doctor to see if
Yeah, speak with your DM to see if min maxing is right for you. But I do it a lot. I think I min max a lot because I'm like, I want to do high damage. I want to have high HP. I want to really bring it in combat. But also that often is relegated to like a small part of my character because my character's story is more important, you know? So I think that's like
something that I do for my players and stats that kind of makes it more balanced, I think, for across the table is for your D&D character to really function on the paper wise, you need to have 2 stats that are pretty good. So you need to have like, at least a +3 in 2 different things in order for your character to kind of function for the most part. And the easy way to kind of do that is like, what are your saving throw proficiencies? Okay, you should probably have those 2 things be the highest.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like as a rogue, I believe it's like intelligence and dexterity. And so it's like, okay, well, let's go ahead and give you, at least a +3 in both of those stats so that your character can succeed at all the things that you're supposed to be good at. Right. The rogue is supposed to be good at investigating and, stealthing and history and clever things. It's like, that's where he's supposed to excel and protect and lead, figuring out traps and stuff like that. So it sucks when you just don't have the stats to back up literally just the class you're trying to play, let alone the character concept. So something I always do as a DM is I give all my players a free 18, and they can replace any stat other than their lowest, because I also am a strong proponent for roleplay, and I think having something your character sucks at is essential for making an unbalanced character makes a balanced party. Because I'm considering the group as a whole. If you have a character who's got 18 in all stats, rolled 18 in all stats, and then with stat boosts from leveling up and from your race features getting stat increases that way, you're likely going to have 2 or 3 20s by the time you're level 5, and your character is just going to be kind of great at everything,
which is not fun for anyone else.
It's great if you're playing a bard or something, but it's great for you, right? But for everyone else, it's like, oh well. Because I remember one time I was playing a rogue in a party, and I failed the lock picking check. I was trying to use thieves' tools to open a lock, and the party ranger is like, oh, I took the charlatan background, so I pull out my thieves' tools, and I'll attempt to unlock the lock, and he succeeds, and it's like, well, then what am I here for?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, that's the one thing I'm good at. And then the ranger is just being a better rogue than me. Like, he also had a really high stealth, and he also had high strength, and he also had good athletics, and it's like, he just kind of did what everyone could do, but a little bit better. And it was just like, what are we here for? Like, what do we have any?
Okay, Mr. One-Man Party. Yeah,
exactly. So I think considering the party is it's not like an MMO levels where it's like we need a healer, a tank, and DPS, like damage. It's like, I think it's not really like that. It's more like from a story perspective, who has their strengths and how can we lean on each other to make a good functioning family kind of.
That's
and how can we set it up so that everyone can have fun, because it's no fun if you're like, every time you need to do a skill check, you're like, well, who has the highest this? And it's like, well, that's me. The one guy just keeps doing everything. It's like, oh, we got to persuade those guards. Who should we do it? I don't know. Yeah. So I think that's like, it's not only important for like the story, the role play, but like to have fun. And that's like, that's pretty important.
Also, I try to get people to break out from playing the same character all the time. When I was young, I would always play a half-orc barbarian. Every single time, always half-orc barbarian. And when the first time I was pushed to play something else, I was really uncomfortable, but then I had so much fun. and I think I played a rogue, and it was just like, whoa, this is. I played the opposite. I played a rat folk rogue, this little, no HP, windbag, just glass, not even a glass cannon, just a glass, nothing,
Just a glass.
just a piece of glass, and it was just like, oh my gosh, like this is so much fun, like, and it opened my eyes to the role play world and how that can be just as entertaining / more entertaining than a combat powerhouse like the half-orc barbarian was. So I think also, like, looking at your party and seeing like, oh well, is the person who's naturally super charismatic, if maybe he should lean away from playing a super charismatic character, as he is automatically always doing that for the party anyway. Maybe he should play a uncharismatic half-orc barbarian, who can't even read, so that the group needs to kind of rely on each other, and he can, it kind of, even from a role play perspective, it kind of balances things out better in that sense. So
or the person who always plays like the lawful good, the party's moral compass, to play an evil guy.
I played my first evil character this year, and it was granted, it was only for about 2 sessions, but I had fun. And it's something I'd be open to more, because I don't play the evil one usually.
Nice. Gotta fill out your resume.
Gotta branch out.
Try something new.
I'll certainly try. If she comes back, I'll play her. But she's sitting to the side right now.
I think the farthest I've ever gone from my typical character style and play style was, I wanted to play a hippie, gender neutral character. It was this elf guy who looked incredibly feminine, but was also bi, and so he was totally fine with people mistaking it, and just roll with it and be like, oh, thanks, man, and like, just super go with the flow, super chill, super like, I'm just down to just live life and
love,
let things be, live, laugh, love, bro. Like, and it's just, I'm not like that in real life at all. Like, he was just like open to try anything. Like, you want me to smoke that? Like, okay, you want me to drink that? I'm just here for the experience, man. Like,
and I think and this is like not even as a character, but like as a person, as a player, it can be so healthy for you as a person to like, not just to expand your perspective and to like, I don't know, to play a character that's very different from who you are. I think that's not only fun for everyone to see, but I think that's also like a cool thing that D&D lets you do. That's my take.
Love it.
Play D&D, guys. Ultimately,
play D&D. Ultimately,
just get that character out there. Consider your party. Don't be an arse. Min-max responsibly. Backstory. Put effort in it.
Do it.
All that good stuff.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much for listening to the Nosy Dragon. I hope you have enjoyed hanging out with us as much as we'd enjoyed hanging out with you.
Oh, it's been a blast.
If you want more of this, we're on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. We're on Spotify.
Hello, Spotify.
And at the moment, that's kind of those are the 2 places you can find. We're also on Twitch. We're also on Twitch.
Yes.
We're also on Twitch.
We stream live these conversations on Twitch. And so thank you guys so much again. Have a lovely rest of your till you see us next.
Yes.
Till then, farewell.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Get out of my tavern.
Hey, you're not closed yet.
Your stuff's bogus anyway. No, it's really good. I'll come back tomorrow.
I know you will.
Damn you, only sultry good.
Only goddamn inn in town.